J'aime mon pays, je le trouve beau dans sa diversité, dans toutes ces cultures qu'il y a, et je veux pas que ces gens-là gâchent le paysage, quoi.
Coming to the incumbent, Emmanuel Macron, he has no plans of banning headscarves, but he has made it clear that he intends to close some mosques. This is something Macron has actively worked towards while in office. Many mosques and Islamic groups have been shut down after investigations have shown that the institutions have links with terror outfits.
Je crois que l'extrême droite, à plusieurs reprises, a contesté certaines valeurs fondamentales, et quand j'entends ce qui a pu être dit par la candidate d'extrême droite sur la manière de réformer la Constitution, sur le retour sur l'abolition de la peine de mort, sur le rapport aux journalistes et leurs récusations, etc., etc., je pense que nous sommes en effet dans une autre catégorie.
The 24th of April runoff is expected to be close. During the campaigning, Le Pen is facing much more hate than Macron, but Le Pen's strategy is still working because the rising hate is being compensated by the rise in popularity, and it seems she is confident of winning.
Ça me confirme dans l'idée que je peux gagner cette élection présidentielle, car la brutalité qui est exprimée à mon égard est proportionnelle aux chances que j'ai de gagner cette élection.
A big question that is being asked is, why has Islam become a top issue during elections in France? Well, the country is home to 5.7 million people who follow Islam. This is 5% of the total population, and half of them are born or naturalized French citizens. So the latest row over headscarves has sparked anger. They feel that their sacred clothing is being politicized unnecessarily. Now, days after being hit by an explosion in the Black Sea, Moscow has confirmed that its guided missile cruiser, Moskva, has sunk. The 510-crew missile cruiser was a symbol of Russia's military power, leading its naval offensive on Ukraine. The United States Defense Ministry has backed Ukraine's claims of hitting Russia's warship with anti-cruise missiles. The Pentagon on Friday said that Ukrainian forces have hit the Russian warship with 2 Neptune missiles, causing it to catch fire and sink in the Black Sea. With Press Secretary John Kirby asserting that the damage to Russian warship will impact their capability in the war in the future, and that Moscow might change its approach after the incident.
They only have 3 in this class. It's a ship that is roughly 600 feet long. It has a crew of almost more than 400, almost 500 sailors on board. And it's basically designed for air defense. That's what this ship is designed to do, not unlike our own cruisers. So it's going to have an impact on their capabilities, certainly in the near term.
Meanwhile, Central Intelligence Agency's Director William Burns said that the threat of Russia potentially using nuclear weapons in Ukraine could not be taken lightly. During an address recently, Burns spoke of the potential desperation and setbacks faced by Russian President Vladimir Putin amid the ongoing war, and how he might now change his stance to shift the wind in his favor.
Given the potential desperation of President Putin and the Russian leadership, given the setbacks that they've faced so far militarily, none of us can take lightly the threat posed by a potential resort to tactical nuclear weapons or low-yield nuclear weapons.
Remember, there is discrepancy as to the cause of the cruiser ship's destruction. While Ukraine has claimed that it hit the Moskva with anti-ship cruise missiles, the Kremlin has denied the claim, saying that a fire of unknown origin detonated the ship's stored ammunition that triggered the explosion. According to reports, part of the Russian warship is now being towed to a port to assess the incident. Moscow, meanwhile, has warned Washington over military aid to Ukraine. In the latest, Russia has now formally protested the US's ongoing shipment of weapons to Ukraine, sending a diplomatic note to the State Department warning of unpredictable consequences. This comes as the US has now said that it is preparing to send an additional $800 million in military aid to Ukraine. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson confirmed Moscow has sent diplomatic notes to the United States and other nations about supplying weapons to Ukraine. In a statement obtained by Washington Post, Moscow has urged on the US and its Western allies to stop the militarization of Ukraine and further escalate the conflict. Shifting focus now, Friday marked a special day for the three Abrahamic faiths, a rare alignment of Easter, Passover, and Ramzan, a time for prayers and family gatherings for Christians, Jews, and Muslims. But the day, which should fuel a flurry of interfaith celebrations, ignited violent clashes at one of the most symbolic and holiest sites in the world, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It has once again become a chronic flashpoint in the protracted Israel-Palestine conflict. Our next report tells you what happened.
These are the scenes from inside Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque on the first Friday of Ramzan. Tens of thousands of Muslims gathered for early morning prayers. The Israel security forces entered the mosque compound and violent clashes followed. Stones pelted, rubber bullets fired, even grenades were thrown. The clashes, which began at around 5:30 a.m. local time, lasted for more than 3 hours. Over 150 Palestinians and several Israeli officers were left injured. This marks the first face-off in the area since the start of Ramzan. Like every story, this too has two different versions. Israeli police say dozens of masked men marched into the mosque setting off fireworks. Witnesses say Palestinians threw stones at Israeli forces first, while the Palestinians say the Israeli forces tried to empty the compound. The police allegedly attacked the mosque staff and people who came to pray.
They repressed our people and emptied the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound while all the world was watching. We condemn this. The people all over the world saw this on their screens.
The Palestinian Prisoners Club reports that around 400 people were arrested after the clashes. What explains this spate of violence? There isn't one single reason. A lot of factors are at play. The first is that this is a holy month. 3 religious festivals are overlapping: Ramzan, Easter, and Passover, the holiest festivals for Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Each year around this time, tensions flare up. There are processions, which turn into clashes and eventually lead to violence. This played out in 2021 and the year before. This time around, things are no different. The second reason is policing tactics. Several roads in Palestinian territories are being closely guarded by Israeli police. Israel says this is only for security purposes, to keep a check on religious processions. The Palestinians don't agree. They consider this bullying, a way to curb religious expression. Several Palestinians complain that the security checks are stopping them from offering prayers on time.
I arrived to the checkpoint with my sister and other women. They let my sister in. They said, "You have to return. You won't be allowed in." Why? They said, "Just go back. I have been waiting here for 2 hours. I don't know why."
The third reason behind the unrest is a spate of terror attacks on Israeli citizens. Since March 22nd, there have been at least 4 major attacks on Israeli citizens. This has made the Israeli security forces spring into action as the Prime Minister of Israel announced a new offensive.
The state of Israel will do everything necessary to overcome this terrorism. We will settle accounts with everyone who was linked, either directly or indirectly, to the attacks.
Palestinians claim Israel is also targeting civilians. They point at the killings of 2 women and a teenager who were recently shot dead in the West Bank. Israel says they were all perpetrators of terror. Palestinians say they were innocent civilians. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
The Russia-Ukraine conflict has triggered a food crisis across the globe. India has now stepped in to fill the vacuum to help feed the world's population and has offered to export over 7 million tons of its 107 million tons wheat production. In the latest, Egypt has now confirmed that it will import wheat from India. Now, Indian Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal confirmed the same. In a tweet, Goyal said, and I quote, "Egypt approves India as a wheat supplier. The Modi government steps in as the world looks for reliable alternate sources for steady food supply." He lauded Indian farmers, saying, "Our farmers have ensured our granaries overflow and we are ready to serve the world." Egyptian Minister of Agriculture Al-Sayed Al-Qasir has confirmed that India is the latest in the list of countries that will serve as an alternate source of wheat for Egypt. Now this after a delegation from the Egyptian Ministry of Agriculture visited India this week, approving Indian wheat after technical studies of the Indian grain. They visited fields and grain warehouses as well as export warehouses in different Indian states, including Punjab, Madhya Pradesh and Mumbai. Egypt is the world's biggest wheat importer and gets over 80% of its wheat imports from Russia and Ukraine. According to the Observatory of Economic Complexity, Egypt imports 12 to 13 million tons of wheat per year, while Egypt has been working to diversify its purchases, holding talks with France, Argentina, and the United States. India has been stepping up for efforts to provide the wheat shortage that the war has triggered. In fact, in a video address on the 12th of April, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke about exporting supplies to the world, an issue he even raised with the US President during his virtual meet earlier in the week. Now, Prime Minister Modi urged the World Trade Organization to relax its norms.
કાલે હું અમેરિકાના રાષ્ટ્રપતિ જોડે ચર્ચા કરતો હતો તો એમણે પણ કહ્યું કે એક મોટું ત્યારે મેં એમને કહ્યું તમે અમને WTO જો પરવાનગી આપે થોડી રાહત કરી દે કે ભાઈ ભારતમાં જે ભંડાર પડ્યા છે તમે બહાર મોકલી શકો છો તો અમે કાલે મોકલવા તૈયાર છીએ અમે તો ભારતને તો જમાડીએ છીએ અમારા અન્નપૂર્ણા માના આશીર્વાદથી અમારા દેશના ખેડૂતોએ જાણે અગાઉથી દુનિયાની चिंता કરી હોય એમ પણ હવે આ તો દુનિયાના કાયદા કાનૂનમાં રહેવું પડે એટલે ખબર નહીં ક્યારે WTO એના કઈ સુધારા કરશે ને આપણને થશે.
India is now filling a gap left in the global food supply chain by the Russia-Ukrainian conflict and soon could be sending to other countries as well, including Nigeria, Turkey, Vietnam, among others. And now let's go across to North Korea, where the people remembered their founding leader. It was Kim Il-sung's 110th birth anniversary. And unlike most of the public shows in North Korea, which are filled with the ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons, this one had people smiling and dancing in colorful clothes. Take a look. And with that, it's a wrap on this broadcast. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to WION World is One. Plenty more global news on the other side of this short break.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday. South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping through a Taliban headquarters now.
90 hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive. India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equation and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are one of the many protest marches.
code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker, weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God help us.
One trillion species, 7.8 billion humans, 1.9 million species extinct, one planet.
Minister Georgiadis, welcome to WION's Straight Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. Your foreign minister was recently invited to India for a 2-day visit, and a number of regional and international issues were discussed, and the two sides decided to continue their cooperation on a number of issues. So where does relations stand between the two sides at this point?
We have excellent relations with India. Just before COVID, India was the honorable country in Thessaloniki Fest, which is the biggest event in Greece. Because of COVID, we didn't have the opportunity to have some official trips to India. I will go to India, also have invitation from my colleague, Minister of Development and Commerce of India, to go there. And we want to find a way to accelerate our relation with India. I'm very proud and happy as Minister of Development and Investment that some significant investment, especially in renewable energy, has come recently to Greece from India. So the future between Greece and India seems bright.
And you are in New York for a number of meetings, and investment in Greece is on top of your agenda. You've been taking numerous trips around the world and now in the United States, in New York. Considering the fact that there's a war going on in Europe right now, do you think there is a concern, and how has that impacted your trip in any way?
First of all, the first 2 years of my term in the Ministry of Development, I received the office on July 2019, were really great. We managed these 2.5 years to attract in Greece some significant foreign direct investments from Pfizer, from Microsoft, from Digital Realty, from Amazon Web Services, from Meta Facebook, and various others. So we want to continue the same path. But the war hasn't really influenced the investments at all in Greece. I can say it has accelerated the process of renewable energy. You see, the war in Ukraine has caused a huge need to European countries to stop buying natural gas from Russia as much as they can. So the needs of producing renewable energy, which is much cheaper now than the energy that comes from oil and gas, is huge. And Greece is a country with big potential in this area because we have solar power very strong since the sunny days in Greece is almost every day, and we have a lot of wind power in our mountains and in the sea. So huge funds are now on their way to invest in Greece in renewable energy.
That's very interesting. And is that something that perhaps maybe a few years down the line, European countries are hoping to move away and end their dependency on oil and gas, or, for example, buying Russian oil and gas? I mean,
all the European agenda is green energy. I mean, beyond the war. It was green energy before the war. Now, the war has made green energy much more compatible as finance, because it's much cheaper. So now we have the need to buy as less natural gas from Russia we can, and we have the motive, which is it's much cheaper. So you see how the system works. If there is a big benefit, the investment will come.
And do you think that's possible right now, given 40% of Europe's natural gas and
we will
oil?
need some time because natural renewable energy doesn't come in one day. You have some license procedure in front. In Greece, we have managed with the current government to reduce bureaucracy at all. Before we were elected, in order to have the permits for a windmill electricity park, you would need 5 to 6 years. These have been accelerated to less than a year now. So if you come and you decide to build your own investment, in less than a year you'll have your permits, and then you will build it, and in, let's say 2 years the most, you will have your first income.
What was fascinating is that Greece can also be an energy hub when it comes to pipeline project, gas projects for the rest of Europe as well. The East Med gas pipeline between Greece, Cyprus, and Israel was in the process of perhaps really providing that until the United States withdrew its support because it wasn't green enough or it wasn't economically friendly enough. But that was an opportunity for Greece, wasn't it? Or is it still ongoing?
I love the United States of America.
Okay.
I really love it. It's not as a support. I love the United States of America. But EastMed is not a decision that is going to be made from the United States of America.
Okay.
To be honest, the United States of America has nothing to do with EastMed. Okay. EastMed is a decision between Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. If we decided to do it, we will do it. Our American friends maybe like it, maybe not, but it's not their job. So simple as that.
Are you going to go along? Is it good? There's an alternative, though.
It's a very good process to be done.
Okay.
And today our Prime Minister announced the escalation of all the investigations for natural gas in Greece. We know now that we have significant resources of natural gas in Greece. If you combine that with the natural gas in Cyprus and with the natural gas in Israel, then everything makes sense.
There's another opportunity between Greece and Turkey, the Trans-Adriatic pipeline as well. Is that something that you would be open to?
Turkey in our neighborhood, to be honest, has some turbulence, not only with us, but almost with everybody in the region. So I cannot really say.
Right.
If they decide to have friendly relations with all their neighbors, they would be welcome. But friendly relations can be stand only in international law and respect of international law. So we're waiting Turkey to respect international law, and then everything is okay.
A few years ago, there was a proposal for a Greek-centric NATO corridor to block Russia from the Black Sea, considering what Russia is doing in Ukraine right now. Is that something that maybe Greece might...
Greece has accelerated our strategic relations with the United States of America. We have signed a new agreement. We have given one of our most strategic points in Greece, Alexandroupolis port, in order to have an American base there. A lot of American troops are there now. This has started before the invasion of Russia and Ukraine, and now it's much more important because of the invasion and the instability in the region. Yes, Greece could play a key role of stability in the region, of course, with our ally, the United States of America.
Right. And, when it comes again to Turkey, both Greece and Turkey, they play such a vital role in changing the security situation in Europe after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Do you think that perhaps with the recent news that we heard that there might be some kind of rapprochement after the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the security situation?
We have not the same policy with Turkey in this issue, to be very honest. Greece is a country that day one supported Ukraine, not only talked against Russia, but implemented all the sanctions European Union, the United States of America decided against Russia. We sent weapons to Ukrainian people to defend themselves, and all the other help we could. Turkey, even though it's a member of NATO alliance, has not implemented sanctions against Russia. It plays both sides in a way. Some would say it's a smart move in order to be able to negotiate with Ukraine and Russia for peace. Okay, maybe this is one way to see it. Others, like me, would say they just want to earn money from the sanctions, and this is not very fair and just.
And what about the hydrocarbon resource and naval influence standoff that Greece and Turkey entered in 2020 in the Mediterranean? Is there any meeting ground regarding that?
There's not serious talks about that with Turkey. We have a lot of other issues to solve first. There are some talkings. Greece is a country of stability. We want peace, of course, and we want good relations with Turkey. I have to be very honest on that. But as I told you before, good relations between nations and states can only stand on respect one against the other. And respect between nations and states stands on international law. Turkey, as we speak, threatens Greece with war if we just follow what international maritime law gives us as a right. Threatening someone with war is against international law, and of course occupies the 40% of Cyprus. With all this in the table, the relation can be, let's say, balanced, but they cannot be really good.
It was very interesting that I read, and I know a lot of investors would be happy to hear that you mentioned that there won't be much COVID restrictions in Greece in the near future. And this is something that a lot of countries and a lot of cities have been grappling with. That would welcome investment in a lot of ways.
Now Greece is in a much more normal way due to COVID. Not as free as here in the United States, to be honest, but a lot more. I think in the early May, everything will be over. You see, we have already vaccinated more than 85% of our population. So the people that are vaccinated are not really have danger from COVID in order to lose their life. Unfortunately, some have not been vaccinated yet, but life goes on. We have to follow our economy and our life and help all the other people that unfortunately have not get vaccinated yet to treat themselves if they are sick as much as we can.
Mr. Minister, you seem very passionate about the renewable energy process for the European Union, and the European Union really does seem to have a will to move away from oil and gas, natural oil and gas in a lot of ways. But do you think that's feasible, and do you think there is an understanding between EU countries and member states, there's an agreement that this should be the case moving forward? Do you think everyone is on the same page?
Other countries more up front, other countries more behind. This is how life always goes on. But I'm telling you again, war in the invasion of Russia and Ukraine will accelerate this process, because now the profit someone can get if compares the price of energy from a windmill or a solar power plant through natural gas or oil, it's huge. So for the budget of the states, for the budget of the people, of the business, of the industry, renewable now is much more efficient. So investment will come to this area, and Greece will play a key role on that because we have natural advantages.
And regarding the and I keep going back to this, this is something that everyone is focused on, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Turkey is playing a mediating role right now. Are you optimistic? How is this all going to end in your view? What will happen ultimately?
I hope the war will end today as we speak. I hope it will end tomorrow. I'm not sure this will happen, to be very honest.
Yeah.
I see that there's a big trouble there. Mr. Putin for sure miscalculated things.
Yeah.
He thought that Ukrainian people will just surrender and will not resist. This is not the case. I have to be very honest. I respect the people of Ukraine that they decided to resist to someone that tried to occupy their country. This is something that has dignity inside, and I wish them all the success in the fight for freedom. I understand that war is a disgusting thing. Terrible things are happening now in Ukraine. War crimes are happening in Ukraine. And I'm not sure that there will be a fast end to all this story.
It's going to be a long war.
I'm afraid.
Yeah. Mr. Minister, thank you so much for joining us on WION Straight Talk. Thank you.
Thank you very
come
much.
back.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping through a Taliban petrol now.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equations and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are
one of the many
getting
protest
ready.
marches.
And it is
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God help us.
One trillion species. 7.8 billion humans. 1.9 million species extinct. One planet. Where are we heading? What should we do? Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is one.
from the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart of the action.
You have 30 seconds. Come on, give it all you got. Keep going. Earn your rest. But wait, there's only 15 seconds of rest and then you go again. Sounds familiar? Welcome to the world of HIIT, or High Intensity Interval Training. Say the words maximum burn in minimum time and you'll find plenty of takers signing up to hit the gym. In the world of HIIT, you alternate between high and low intensity exercises or rest. Need a practical example? Imagine sprinting up a flight of stairs followed by a brisk walk down. This is the essence of interval training. And if you Google weight loss or quick fat loss, this term is likely to be thrown at you. Don't get us wrong, the benefits of such workouts are well documented. It improves your metabolic health, basically how your body turns food into energy. Some say it helps you lose fat and gain muscle. It burns more calories in less time. It is also said that it improves your cardiovascular health. In an HIIT workout, you would reach 80 to 85% of your maximum heart rate, simply because of the high intensity of your workouts. Here's a case study. Open your Instagram and you'll see HIIT workouts getting millions of views. Celebrities have endorsed them, shown you the before and the after. It's a workout which has received social media's approval and has been glamorized by the fitness industry. So it sounds great, right? A mere 15-minute workout where you burn more calories and improve your heart health. What do you have to lose? Well, quite a lot. A report has highlighted that too much of high-intensity exercise may be counterproductive. The report finds that excessive HIIT can put pressure on your joints in particular, disrupt your metabolism, and lead to poor sleep. It can even cause lasting anxiety beyond your workout, say some experts. And those with underlying ailments and heart conditions definitely need to check with their doctor before taking this up. So should HIIT workouts be discarded to the social media recycle bin? No. The key here is balance. Just like too much screen time, too much sugar, or even excessive retail therapy, which can all be harmful, unchecked HIIT is not going to help you either. So stop using the excuse of, I don't have time, to opt for a quick fix. Don't let social media trends fool you. Back your workouts with good nutrition and choose what's sustainable for you in the long run, because you may be doing 50 burpees a day or more. But creaking joints at a later stage in life will make a simple walk a big task. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the big
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hoping to a Taliban petrol now.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. We're watching a WION World is One. My name is Priyanka Sharma and here are the top stories that we're tracking at this hour. The Colombo Stock Exchange announces a 5-day trading halt after Sri Lanka hiked its interest rates and declares a default on its external debt during the traditional New Year holiday. Meanwhile, Russia steps up airstrikes on Kyiv, hitting another military factory after 2 weeks of relative calm in the Ukrainian capital. Moscow announces that it is banning the entry to Prime Minister Boris Johnson and several other top UK officials after London imposed sanctions on Russia over its military operations in Ukraine. And Twitter moves to defend itself against Elon Musk's $43 billion hostile takeover bid, announcing a position, or rather a poison pill plan that would make it harder for the billionaire to get a controlling stake in the Our top focus at this hour. Just days after taking power, Pakistan's new government has now decided not to roll back billions in fuel subsidies for the time being. And the badly timed move comes despite the strain on public funds. The Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, has now cited the possible backlash if it were to raise fuel prices. And this is a contention for the Pakistani politician and the population as of now. And despite soaring global prices, a cut in petrol and electricity tariffs was announced in February by the former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Imran Khan's bid intended to win back to popular support, but he was ousted in a confidence vote last week. The country's oil and gas regulatory authority had advised that the government should scrap the subsidies and raise the prices which were effective from today. And since a reversal of the fuel subsidies will be politically sensitive for the country at large, for a new government trying to shore up support and popular support at that, it has now decided against raising the rates while announcing the move. The new Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, said that people would curse the new government if it took such an extreme step.
21 रुपए और 50 रुपए ये बढ़ा रहे थे मुख्तलिफ मदाद में 50 रुपए पर लीटर 21 रुपए बहुत बड़ा एक महंगाई का एक पहाड़ अगर आवाम पे गिरता तो 3 दिन में लोग हमें बददुआएं देना शुरू हो जाए। उनको क्या पता कि पिछली हुकूमत ने क्या चक्कर किया और क्या चक्कर चलाया ताकि वो हमें लपेटें। उनको पता था कि शायद ये हुकूमत नहीं आ जाएगी, तो फिर ये जान उनके काम जाने। चुनांचे मैंने 21 रुपये लीटर और 50 रुपये लीटर वाली समरी मुस्तरद कर दी है।
Now, this measure was initially estimated to cost $2.1 billion. The current government's decision to keep prices unchanged will force it to give another heavy amount in subsidy from April 16th to the 30th. The country will be put under an additional $164 million of a financial burden, and all this is happening while the Pakistan economy is still struggling to meet its debt. Let's tell you about it now. Pakistan's external debt has now grown to almost $130 billion. The economic crisis has been further escalated by the trade deficit. That has now increased to $35.4 billion. Inflation in Pakistan is running at 12.7%. Officials have been warning of the fiscal fallout of the continuing rise in prices as well as the continuing subsidies. Pakistan's finance ministry's top officials now fear that the subsidy has now stretched the government resources and finances in a way that cannot be sustained. The move also puts an ongoing International Monetary Fund rescue program at risk. Pakistan is currently in the midst of a $1 billion IMF bailout program. The 7th review is yet to be cleared, under which the IMF would release more than $900 million. The 7th review started in early March, but no agreement was reached before the collapse of the Imran Khan government. And now, in the wake of the weakening currency, the Imran Khan government and the leading government doesn't seem to have formulated any concrete steps or reform that could work to tackle the same. Now, staying with Pakistan, the newly instated Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is yet to announce his cabinet. While there is no final word on the likely ministers, the leaders of the Pakistan People's Party, that is the PPP, have now reportedly suggested 4 names. And all these are for different portfolios within the new government. The PPP leaders held a session at the party president Asif Ali Zardari's residence. To rescue the portfolios for the new government, the members suggested that the Benazir Income Support Program should be given to the member Sherry Rahman. Syed Khurshid Ahmed Shah's name also came to fore for the Communication Department in particular, while Naveed Qamar has now been suggested for the Petroleum Cabinet. And the Ministry of Human Rights was asked to be given to Shazia Mari. These names have not yet been finalized, but Bilawal Bhutto is most likely to be appointed as the next foreign minister of Pakistan. He happens to be the chairperson of the Pakistan People's Party, of course, and in the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz Party, the PPP's 3 members are likely to get the particular slots as ministers, while 4 could be appointed as state ministers. During the sessions, the members also recommended giving in the Interior Ministry to the PMLN leader, Rana Sanaullah, while Planning and Development Ministry was recommended for Aslan Iqbal. Now, let's get you a little bit more information about what's happening in the political landscape in Pakistan as of now. It was recommended to give 2 ministries, including the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, to Muttahida Qawmi Movement Pakistan. Shehbaz Sharif became the Prime Minister on April 11th following the ouster of Imran Khan through and after losing the no confidence motion. An earlier report suggested that Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has now decided to add 12 National Assembly members of the PMLN and 7 members of the PPP to his federal cabinet. Meanwhile, Raja Parvez Ashraf of the Pakistan People's Party has been elected unopposed as the Speaker of the National Assembly. The Speaker's office fell vacant after Asad Kaisar tendered his resignation last week. The PPP continues to be the lone contender for the opposition, since no other contender had submitted nomination papers against him. Meanwhile, ahead of the session, the National Assembly Deputy Speaker, that is Qasim Suri, had resigned. And in a statement, the PTI member said that the decision to resign symbolizes his party's vision. And earlier, the joint opposition had filed a no-trust vote against the Deputy Speaker, alleging him being a bit biased towards the PTI government. The resignation came just hours before the no-confidence motion, which has been crucial at this point. Now, for more details about what's actually happening in the Pakistan political landscape, our Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik now joins us live. Anas, thanks so much for joining us. My first question to you, what can you tell us about the political landscape in Pakistan as it stands as of now, and what does it mean for the people of Pakistan in particular?
Well, it's a looming crisis. The political turmoil is a looming crisis here in Pakistan for one very reason. There's uncertainty, there's chaos, and chaos can lead to anarchy as well. Chaos leads to anxiety, and anxiety eventually leads to anarchy. And that's what we're seeing. Today, the Speaker of the House has been elected. The Speaker has given a ruling basically striking down the decision by the Deputy Speaker, which called for accepting the resignations of PTI member parliaments. The PTI is continuously holding protests, en masse protests. Today they are scheduled to hold a grand protest in the city of Karachi, the biggest city of Pakistan. So as we speak, there is political uncertainty. 5 days on since Shahbaz Sharif has taken oath, the cabinet is yet to be announced. As I said, this political chaos or this political uncertainty might lead to anxiety, and that can create some sort of unrest, a reflection of of which we saw today in the Punjab Assembly as well, and it has been echoed by the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf's former Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry, he has said that all of the situation and scenario is going towards a civil unrest, and that is something that should be avoided. Yesterday, when I was talking to him in an exclusive conversation with WION, Fawad Chaudhry had maintained that he foresees elections happening in the next 8 weeks. So as I said, there is a lot of drama, there's a lot of political uncertainty, and God forbid, all of this can possibly lead to some chaos as well.
Right, absolutely, Anas. Now let's talk about what's actually happening on ground in Pakistan as we speak. We've been reporting on the economic crisis in Pakistan. We've also been reporting on the political upheaval that is still ongoing. But let's talk about what the people of Pakistan want. There's a change of guard, there's a new Prime Minister. But having said that, do the people of Pakistan trust in their new governance? And also, will this lead to a resolution of the economic crisis, which is at its peak as we speak?
Well, the first question, Priyanka, answering your first question, whether the people of Pakistan trust this government, that's a very subjective or a figurative question. You go to pockets which were held by PTI, you would find greater opposition to this government or to the incumbent government. You go to pockets that are ruled by the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz or have been historically held by the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, and you'd see greater support for this government. So that's relative and rather very subjective as to where and who you are talking to. There is a divided opinion in general public with regards to the legitimacy of this government. But having said that, on to the answer to your second question, this government has said that it has considerable plans. I was part of that interaction on Tuesday when Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, on his first day in the office, held an iftar dinner with journalists, and he said that they've got two pointer strategy. First is the short-term plan, which is going to be implemented immediately with regards to economy, and the second is the long-term plan. So prima facie, if this government is allowed to function, or if they continue to function in an ideal most manner, then possibly what they believe or what they claim is that yes, they have the solution to the deepening or worsened economic situation that Pakistan is currently under. Priyanka?
Right, absolutely. Anas Malik, our Pakistan Bureau Chief, getting us all the latest updates about what's actually happening on ground in Pakistan as we speak. Thanks so much for joining us on WION at this hour. Let's move on to other global stories now. The police department in Grand Rapids, Michigan, is now facing a severe criticism after a police officer shot dead an unarmed black man earlier this month. The incident has now sparked protests across the city while protesters demand justice. Protesters, as we can see, took to the streets, expressing their anger over the fatal shooting. The crowds chanted slogans against the police department as well as the march to the city's police headquarters, holding banners reading "Respect existence" or "Respect resistance." These protests have been peaceful so far and came after the family of the lawyer remanded that the authorities dismissed the officer who was involved in the incident. The family has also demanded that the criminal charges be filed against the cop. All this after 26-year-old Patrick Loyola, who was a black Congolese refugee, was killed in a Grand Rapids neighborhood during a routine traffic stop.
You have a license? Do you have a license?
The police have now released video footage of the incident showing the officer engaged in a physical combat, or rather a scuffle, with Loyola, with both of them struggling to gain control of a stun gun before Loyola was shot.
1915, got one running. Short cloud. Stop! Stop! Okay. Stop! Stop! Okay.
Meanwhile, the police officer has not been publicly identified yet. The police killings of black Americans has now drawn attention across the globe over the past few years. All this because of a white Minneapolis police officer who kneeled on the neck of George Floyd, something that all of us have seen until George Floyd died in 2020. And all this led to the Black Lives Matter movement, which highlighted the abuse of the rights of black Americans and called on American authority to ensure that they were protected. And now let's move on to some COVID-19 updates, specifically in China, where there are no signs of the COVID outbreak abating. Shanghai, the financial hub, has now reported a record number of symptomatic COVID-19 cases, and despite the dynamic clearance approach, which has been aimed at stamping out the Omicron variant, on April 15th, China reported more than 24,000 new COVID cases, and out of these, nearly 4,000 were asymptomatic. Beijing has dug in deep its heels on the zero COVID strategy. It involves stamping out any kind of clusters of COVID-19 infections while conducting mass testing and also isolating positive cases. This has now resulted in strict movement restrictions in Shanghai in particular for around 2 weeks now. While at the center of China's recent outbreak, the city's COVID case tally makes up the majority of cases. Now, this is despite most of its 25 million residents staying under a strict lockdown. The intercity travel restrictions have been heightened, and a shortage of truck drivers has now crippled the supply chain issues. And for failing to ensure that the supplies of fresh food reach all residents due to pandemic control measures, the Taiwanese manufacturer Quanta Computer has also suspended its production at its Shanghai subsidiary. The plant assembles MacBooks in particular for Apple. And the move has now put the supply of the top-tier Apple laptops at risk. There are also concerns about reports of female workers at these plants being transferred to a quarantine camp. Now, other major cities that have been struck with miniature COVID outbreaks include the city of Xi'an in the northwestern part of China. Residents have been urged to avoid unnecessary trips outside their residential compounds following dozens of COVID-19 cases reported this month. Meanwhile, companies have been encouraged to have their employees work from home or live at their workplace. Let's talk about the Zhengshu Airport economic zone in particular. A 14-day lockdown is what is a reality as it stands as of now. It is a central Chinese manufacturing area that includes the Apple supplier Foxconn's factory in particular. This is how you get all your Apple gadgets. And the lingering restrictions are seen likely to lead to delays in shipments as well as other deliveries from companies, which includes the tech giant Apple. Economists say that the curbs will weigh in on the country's economic growth rate this year in particular. The growth in the world's second largest economy was already slowing down in the latter half of the year. Analysts now predict that the outbreak of COVID-19 would reverse the gains made earlier in the year. And let's move on now to some interesting news coming in from the United Kingdom. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle made their first public appearance in Europe for the first time since they quit their royal titles and moved to the United States. They also visited the UK for the first time in 2 years and paid a visit to the Queen ahead of their tour to the Netherlands. The couple attended a reception for the Invictus Games at The Hague, which was held in the honor of the injured veterans. The Invictus Games is a multi-sport event and was created in 2014 by Prince Harry, who served as a soldier in Afghanistan in particular. And the event was later cancelled for the last 2 years due to the pandemic. The couple's office confirmed that they visited the grandmother, that is Queen Elizabeth II, at Windsor Castle ahead of their visit to The Hague. All this was after Prince Harry had previously said that he hoped to see his grandmother. The Buckingham Palace in particular declined to comment on this report, while media reports also suggested that Harry and Meghan also saw Prince Charles during the visit. And with that, it's a wrap on this broadcast. Thanks for watching with me, Priyanka Sharma. Stay tuned to WION World is One. Global news updates continue on the other side. Stay tuned.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest. It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God help us.
One trillion species. 7.8 billion humans. 1.9 million species extinct. One planet. Where are we heading? What should we do?
Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is one.
From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart of the action. Incisive analysis, unrivaled perspective, and exclusive ground reports. Watch West Asia Post every Friday, 8:30 p.m. IST with me, Ghadi Francis. Only on WION. World is one.
Stay connected with the world.
Hello, and welcome to South Asia Diary with me, Mariam Wardak. Our cover story tonight is from Pakistan, a country caught in the middle of a political crisis. The parliament, the courts, and the army. Every branch of government has gotten involved. Crises like this tend to have a domino effect. Pakistan's political instability is also affecting its economy. On tonight's episode, we tell you how. Also on the show,
a 70-year-old retiree from France looks to chart a new and safer route to the Everest summit. A ground report on why Bangladesh's capital Dhaka is topping noise pollution charts. Afghanistan marks its first Ramzan since the Taliban's return amid shortages and inflation. Sri Lanka's economic crisis has dealt a major blow to the country's forex lifeline, tourism.
the economy loves political stability. It means steady policies and no unwanted disruptions. But in Pakistan, that's not an option. The political crisis in Islamabad is plunging the country into an economic crisis. There is anxiety and fear among businesses.
For the last few years, Pakistan has been witnessing a dreading economic slowdown. Their foreign debt continues to pile up. There is unemployment and biting inflation. And if that was not taxing enough, the country plunged into a political crisis last week. The fight in Islamabad had a direct effect on the Karachi Stock Exchange, compounding the economic woes. But now, after a week crashing stock prices and a plummeting Pakistani rupee, smiles are back at the Karachi Stock Exchange. PMLN Shehbaz Sharif has taken charge as the Pakistani Prime Minister, and his election to the high office has brought much needed stability to Pakistani stock market.
अच्छा साइन है कि नई हुकूमत को जो वेलकम किया है स्टॉक मार्केट ने इसके साथ-साथ
This is a good sign. The market has welcomed the new government. At the same time, foreign exchange rate has improved. This increase is also a good omen. The business community is expecting the new government to be business friendly and resolve its problems.
अब लगता है कि आने वाले दिनों में जो नई गवर्नमेंट है वो जो है बिजनेस फ्रेंडली होगी.
Time for a flashback. How did Pakistan descend into this chaos? It all started on the 3rd of April. Pakistan's parliament was set for a trust vote. Imran Khan's government did not have the numbers. If the vote went ahead, the Prime Minister would have been toppled. But minutes before the vote, this happened.
I give the ruling that the no confidence motion is in violation of the Constitution and sovereignty. It is against the rules and procedures. I give the ruling of disallowing the motion. I, using power conferred in me, adjourn this session of the National Assembly.
A googly by the cricketer turned politician. Imran Khan was never going to face the trust vote. Instead, he dissolved the assembly. He called for fresh elections. Pakistanis were outraged. The move was condemned as illegal and unconstitutional.
The government believes themselves to be in the right, but it is unconstitutional. So there is unrest among people, and people are unsure about what is going to happen in the future.
Soon the court got involved. They decided to examine the Deputy Speaker's decision. Was he right in dissolving the parliament? What followed was days of deliberation. The government fielded its own lawyers. They argued the move was legal, that it was necessary to prevent foreign meddling. After 5 days, the verdict came. It was Imran Khan's turn to walk back to the pavilion. The court set aside the Deputy Speaker's decision. It called for a trust vote in 2 days. Cut to Sunday. Tension is in the air. Islamabad's streets are crawling with police. Imran Khan has fielded his top lieutenant for his defense, Shah Mahmud Qureshi. As the clock ticks to midnight, the crisis escalates. There are rumors that Imran Khan may fire the army chief. The opposition knocks at the court's door. They demand contempt charges against Imran Khan. Moments later, the tension breaks. Imran Khan's lawmakers leave the National Assembly. The no-confidence vote goes ahead. The results are a foregone conclusion.
174 members have recorded their votes in favor of the resolution. Consequently, the resolution for vote of no confidence against Mr. Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Islamic Republic of Pakistan, has been passed by a majority of the total membership of the National Assembly.
With that, another Prime Minister is ousted mid-term. The opposition candidate, Shehbaz Sharif, has now taken to the pitch. He was elected the 23rd Prime Minister of Pakistan in a House vote. The Sharifskian's innings began with a victory speech laden with promises of economic revival. A new era for Pakistan. But for those who have seen Pakistan's history over the last 7 decades, know that the teams might change. But ultimately, there is one constant winner, and that is the army. South Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Tourism has been the backbone of Sri Lanka's economy. It contributed over 10% of the island nation's GDP. But the COVID-19 pandemic battered the industry. Restrictions led to tourism slowing to a trickle. And just when the curbs were easing, the exploding economic crisis has further hampered travels. Hotel and restaurant owners say they are struggling to repay loans.
Pristine beaches, tea plantations, ancient cities, and exotic wildlife. Sri Lanka is a traveler's paradise. Popular among both high-end globetrotters and budget travelers, tourism is at the heart of the country's economy. It accounts for over 10% of the country's GDP. It is the third largest source of foreign exchange, an important source of dollars for the government. But in the last 3 years, tourism here has taken a hit. First, there was the Easter bombings in 2019. Then the pandemic struck in 2020, and now the spiraling economic crisis.
I would definitely say this is the worst crisis since independence, just because while there have been crises, not to this magnitude and not to this level of disruption of the economy, the productive capacity of businesses to operate during power cuts and whatnot. It has impacts across the entire value chain.
This is Dilip Sundarovan. His guest house is a short walk from the beach in Marissa, but currently there are only a few reservations. Power cuts are making life difficult for this hostel owner. The tourists that are staying are also asking for discounts.
We are unable to serve our customers right now because of the power cut. The guests are not satisfied and they don't want to stay here.
Guests are complaining about air conditioning, hoteliers cannot access online booking platforms, and fuel shortages are making it harder to travel.
We find some problems because about the petrol. They don't have a lot of petrol, so maybe you have to wait a little bit to take a bus, to take a tuk-tuk, and it's a little bit more expensive.
Sri Lankan tourism has been plagued by setbacks before, but this is the industry's worst crisis since the civil war. Colombo is depending on tourism to revive its economy. Now, even a fully thriving tourism industry will not be enough, especially for Sri Lanka to claw itself out of this exploding crisis. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, is an assault on your senses. Car horns, hawkers, rallies. It's a city that is always bustling, but that bustle can often be counterproductive. Dhaka is among the most sound-polluted cities in the world. Almost all areas of the city have 2 to 3 times more noise than acceptable levels. Our correspondent in Dhaka makes sense of this mayhem.
This is Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh. Life is very busy here. The streets of the city are the busiest, as if no one has the time to wait even for a moment. And the consequences? Excessive noise pollution. The whole city of Dhaka is now affected by noise pollution. According to doctors, a person's normal sound level should be 40 to 50 decibels. But various surveys by the government and non-government organizations show that the noise level in Dhaka city is 2 to 3 times higher than the acceptable level in almost all areas. The main cause of noise pollution in this city is the noise of vehicles and their horns. However, the use of loud mics or sound systems in political, social and religious events is another big reason.
এখন সাইডে যাওয়ার জায়গা নেই, অত শুনে হরন বাজাই চলছে। এই ধরনের আমাদের অনেক ধরনের সমস্যা দেখা যায়, মাথায় অনেক মাথা ব্যথা হয়, আর শরীরে বিভিন্ন ধরনের সমস্যা দেখা যায়। কানের সমাধান কোনো কিছু শোনা যায় না, তো তখন কানের শব্দে কোনো কিছু শোনা যায় না।
হ্যাঁ, বিরক্ত লাগে আমার, জাস্ট অতিরিক্ত হয়ে যায়। এটা আমি আপনাদেরকে বলে বুঝাইতে পারবো না।
অনেক সময় ফোন আসে, আমি ফোনের রিসিভ করতে পারি না, অথবা কারেন্টের জন্য মানুষের একটা কথা বলবো, এই কথাটাও ক্লিয়ার শুনতে পাওয়া যায় না।
আমরা সবাই ব্যবহার করি, অস্বাভাবিক প্রয়োজন অপ্রয়োজনে বেশি ব্যবহার করি, কারণ যেখানে প্রয়োজন নাই সেখানে আমরা সাউন্ডটা হর্নটা ইউজ করি। এটা আমাদের দেশের জন্য খুব দুর্ভাগ্যজনক, আমরা এটা কন্ট্রোল করতে পারি নাই আমাদের প্রশাসন বা।
The government has declared the Secretariat area of the capital as a silent zone as a pilot project to prevent noise pollution. The unnecessary blowing of horns in the area would be a punishable offence. Even then, the government's project did not see success. Drivers do not obey the law, even in front of sensitive institutions like schools and hospitals in the capital.
The area I'm standing in now is called silent area or noise pollution free zone. But all around me there is evidence that no one is following the government's instructions.
In 2017, the court banned hydraulic horns in Bangladesh. According to the government's import policy, horns with a capacity of more than 75 decibels cannot be imported. But in reality, 90% of the vehicles are using hydraulic horns.
না চলাচল করে নিজ দিয়ে চলাচল করে, তো হরেন দিতে হয় যাত্রীদের কেয়ারফুল করার জন্য, গাড়ি একটা চাপ দেয় তাদেরকে হুঁশিয়ার করার জন্য। সবচেয়ে বেশি বাজাইলে আমরা বাসালারা আর হলো পাঠাও, এই যে বাসালার আগে যাই করতো, বেশি বাজাইলো মোটরসাইকেল আনারা আপনার লাগে মনে করেন পিক পিক দিতেই থাকে। কিন্তু মোটরসাইকেলে যারা উঠে তাদের তো একটু তাড়াহুড়া বেশি, ভাড়া বেশি দিয়ে উঠে, যার কারণে আমাদের একটু হর্নটা বেশি দিতে হয়।
আইন আছে, কিন্তু আসলে আমরা কেউ আইনের তোয়াক্কা করি না। আমাদের মেন সমস্যা আমরা নিজেরাই,
আমরা নিজেরাই এর জন্য দায়ী। আমরা নিজেরা যদি সচেতন হই অবশ্যই এটা মানা সম্ভব, কিন্তু তাছাড়া তো সম্ভব না।
According to the latest report of the United Nations Environment Programme, Dhaka is the world's noisiest city, while another city in Bangladesh, Rajshahi, is fourth on the list. India's Moradabad of Uttar Pradesh and Islamabad of Pakistan are the second and third positions on the list. Doctors say that people in Dhaka are suffering from various diseases including hearing loss, deafness, heart disease and irritable mood due to high noise. Children and adults are most at risk, and heart patients are facing the utmost challenges.
I have conducted a research on rickshaw pullers in Dhaka city who are very much exposed to the streets. You know, there is near about 1 million rickshaw pullers in Dhaka city, and among them, more than 25% is suffering from some sort of hearing loss. We got many patients regarding the hearing loss mainly, also with tinnitus, vertigo, and headache. This sort of patients is very common nowadays.
Even in such a situation, common people are leaving the villages and coming to the city in search of livelihood. So, the number of vehicles on the roads of the capital is increasing by the day. Now, what is the way to survive noise pollution?
I will recommend to follow the 2006 law which has been passed by the government, to follow the guidelines such as not to make noise, to lower the volume of the TV, also to lower the volume of the PA system which has been used for the public or religious purpose.
Physicians and environmentalists fear that if noise pollution is not controlled, the future of the capital could be even more dire.
Experts say that 1/3 of the people in Dhaka are somehow affected by various diseases due to noise pollution. If this continues, people in a large part of the city may lose their hearing. This is Lakmina Bismin Shoma for WION in Dhaka.
Everest season is finally here, and along with it, new adventurers. People who want to make their mark on the tallest mountain in the world. Tonight, we will meet one such daredevil from France. He's planning to scale the Everest using a new route. If successful, he could be the oldest person to reach the summit.
Meet Mark Bata. At 70, he looks like the typical Western retiree in Kathmandu. Here, in search of some peace and quiet, well, not so fast, Bata is here to conquer the Everest. That too, by using a newer, safer route. If successful, many records await him. Oldest person to summit Everest without bottled oxygen. First person to successfully chart a new route.
This project is not only for me. I am very happy to climb again Everest, but I want to use my reputation, I don't know, to do some good things.
But why the new route? Because the old one is treacherous. Normally, climbers on the Everest must navigate this. The lethal Khumbu icefall. This ever-shifting expanse of glacial ice has claimed more than 40 lives. In 2014, a huge block of ice broke off from the icefall. 16 Nepalese guides were killed. It was one of the deadliest tragedies on Everest. Bata is keen to avoid such mishaps.
If I didn't find these routes, I can't go in Everest because I don't want to go in icefall. It's too dangerous. Even if I climb many times, but it's too dangerous.
So how do you take this new route? First stop is Gorakshep at 5,150 meters. It is nestled away from the bustling tent city at base camp. From there, Bata and team will cross the foothills of adjoining Naptsi to an unnamed peak. Which brings us to the team. Who is Bata taking along? Pasang Nuru Sherpa, 47 years of age and a 14-time Everest veteran. Their sons will also tag along on the campaign. Except for Bata, the whole team is under 50. Can the aging French retiree keep up? At this point, you probably need a flashback into Bata's life. He began climbing at 18. His first conquest was the Pyrenees that straddle France and Spain. In 1988, he set an Everest record. First climber to summit without bottled oxygen in under 24 hours. Yup, the now silver-haired Frenchman was a daredevil climber. They call him the Sprinter. Decades later, Bata is back from retirement. His eyes set on that elusive record.
This year I want to finish my project because my project is to climb Everest at 70 years old without oxygen.
Nepal has just reopened to climbers after the COVID-19 pandemic. A high-profile climber is exactly what it needs. A record breaker, even better. So he is wishing Mark Bata a successful summit. South Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Afghanistan observed its first Ramadan under the Taliban regime. It was marked by shrinking rights and a growing humanitarian disaster, rising prices, shortage of foods, and a looming famine. That's what awaits Afghans this holy month. It's a strange turn of events, because after 20 years, there is no war during Ramadan, but there is no prosperity either.
Kandahar, deep inside Taliban country. It's the first day of Ramzan. At this local mosque, dozens of devout Afghans have gathered. Under the fading light, a humble spread has been laid. The famous Afghan flatbread, bowls of rice, and bright red curry. Not far away is another spread. This one is inside a security checkpost. These men are not your regular worshippers. They are fighters of the Taliban. This contrast is the new reality in Afghanistan. It is the first Ramzan since the Taliban's takeover. For many, it's a strange feeling. Yes, there is no war after 20 years, but there is no prosperity either.
The previous explosions and battles are completely over. Now we are free from that. Now it's a bit of a business problem, a problem of rising prices. Other than that, there are no more problems.
Taliban or not, one thing has not changed. Kabul's food-crazed streets. Fried, baked, rolled, stuffed. You'll find all kinds of food here. As dusk approaches, so do the people, eager to end their day-long fast. But as the shops open, reality strikes.
Unfortunately, the price of food has become very expensive. For example, yesterday an egg cost 6 Afghanis, but today it has increased to 10. In fact, the price of an egg has increased by 4 Afghanis in 24 hours.
Afghanistan needs humanitarian assistance. Last month, the United Nations called for a donor conference. They demanded $4.4 billion, but fell short by $2 billion.
We count on you to disburse your generous pledges as quickly as possible. We also hope that many of you will exceed the commitments that you have made today, and that you will continue to support the humanitarian response in Afghanistan, the Central Emergency Response Fund, and the hundreds of millions of people in other crises around the world.
For the Taliban too, it's a different Ramzan. No dusty deserts or jagged hills. This time, they are lounging in Afghanistan cities. If the Taliban's fortunes improved, the people's did not. This holy month is filled with uncertainty and misery, a sort of limbo, where there is peace but no prosperity, where there is certainty but also anxiousness. South Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of South Asia Diary. We'll be back next week with a brand new lineup of stories. Until then, stay safe. I am Mariam Wardak, and you are watching WION. World is One.
One World Trade Center that is the one where
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday. South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hoping through a Taliban control now.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent air.
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equations and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle.
As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are
One of the many
getting ready.
protest
They're
marches
picking up the weapons here.
and they will
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker, weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer.
Hello and welcome, and thanks for tuning in. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Priyanka Sharma, and here are the top stories that we're tracking at this hour. Take a look. Russia steps up airstrikes on Kyiv, hitting another military factory after 2 weeks of relative calm in the Ukrainian capital. Moscow announces that it is now banning the entry to Prime Minister Boris Johnson and several other top UK officials after London imposed sanctions on Russia over its military operations in Ukraine. Twitter moves to defend itself against Elon Musk's $43 billion hostile takeover bid, announcing a poison pill plan that would eventually make it harder for the billionaire to get a controlling stake. And Nepal's central bank increases its interest rates in a bid to extend the country's depleting foreign reserves, which have now been hit by falling tourism during the pandemic. Three Chinese astronauts returned to Earth after 183 days in space, ending China's longest crewed mission as it continues its quest to become a major space power. Look around you. Anyone wearing any masks? Probably not. Anyone reminding you to wear a mask? Unlikely. Mask mandates are now a thing of the past. Fines for not masking up have been reduced or are now being removed altogether. COVID restrictions are being lifted across the world. The world is opening up. Countries are now making the transition to a pre-pandemic life. Restaurants and cafes are open. Cinemas and theatres are welcoming people, while people are back inside the office. They are working not from home anymore, but from office. And then there's China's zero COVID policy. This is being implemented in Shanghai as we speak, where citizens are screaming to be heard.
因为所有的人，你都不晓得这个状态到底维持到啥个情况。
All these people, as we've been reporting on WION, are revolting against harsh COVID restrictions. But at the same time, be it the United States, the UAE, Denmark, France, Spain, or even England for that matter, face coverings are no longer mandated by law. And that's a big story at this hour. In India too, COVID curbs are a thing of the past. While masks are advisable by experts, there is no penalty if you choose to go mask-free in public. Cases are, however, rising in the Indian capital, New Delhi in particular, and the schooling system is now at the center of this storm. While children head back to classrooms across the world, some for the very first time in most countries, kids are still unvaccinated.
And that is a big concern for all of us. So the big question is, should they be wearing masks? There are already concerns that we've been flagging about a new variant of COVID-19, BA2, and now XE, and that's a new variant that's being spoken about. Is it more contagious? Are we being complacent about the COVID threat? Is COVID fatigue influencing government policies? On this special broadcast, we'll try and answer some of these questions with me, Priyanka Sharma. But the big question at this point is, when is the right time to unmask, if at all? So when do we let our guard down? Is COVID fatigue making us complacent? Can we throw away our masks? Are they even effective? To answer all this, joining us now on this special broadcast is our esteemed panel of guests. I welcome, to begin with, Professor Manfred Green, a professor of epidemiology from the University of Haifa in Israel. Also joining us is Dr. Richard Pinter, a lecturer from the Imperial College in London. And finally, also joining us is Dr. Sarah Pitt, a virologist from the University of Brighton in the UK. I begin this broadcast by thanking all of you for your time, and thanks so much for joining us on WION World is One.
Thank you.
So my first question to you, I want to begin with Professor Manfred. As we understand, different COVID strategies are being deployed in different countries depending on the COVID cases that are currently rising. But the big question that I have for you is, have governments cracked to a certain extent what may work and what doesn't work when it comes to containing cases?
Thank you very much. I think that we're at a phase now which was predicted basically a couple of years ago, when we asked the question, how long would we continue restrictions and how long this would go on? And some of the answers were that when it gets to the stage where we are seeing the number of cases or the case rate being something like influenza and the death rate being similar to influenza, then we'll be reducing restrictions, not because it's not a problem, but because we've pretty much learned to live with it. And it's familiar to all of us that even though it might be effective, and in fact now there's good evidence that it would be effective, using masks and using social distancing to reduce the impact of influenza, this has not been done. And so I think that people basically now feel, if we're back to the stage where we're with an infectious disease which doesn't seem to be more serious than influenza.
Right, Professor Green, I just want to interject at this point, and I want to ask you a question that is on all parents' mind. We are sending our kids to school. We are not sure if in fact they are masking up while they're in classes or not. Should we be worried about the new infections that are currently on the radar?
Again, I think the people who are at highest risk are still the elderly and the people who have immunosuppression, although in the last wave we saw a lot of kids being affected. So again, it's what we would call risk management. Certainly, I would suggest that where possible, as long as the case rates are high in that particular area, I think that mask use is still effective. So I think it still should be considered as a policy. But I guess that's going to be something that's going to be tailored to the particular country and the particular situation.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Professor Green. I want to take my next question from Professor Pinder, from Dr. Pinder. We've been talking about cases rising in some small pockets across the globe, especially in educational institutions and schools. Should parents be concerned in particular? We've seen on social media parents raising queries about should our kids be masking when they're in school, and if they're not able to wear a mask, should they be at home in case of a so-called outbreak or one kid testing positive. Several governments have also made masks optional now. Are parents' concerns valid?
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable as a parent myself to be concerned about what's going on. But we have to understand that actually, certainly among younger kids in particular, the risk is really very low compared to, just as Professor Green was saying, the elderly are at much, much greater risk. And it's very easy, I think, in a lot of public health to look and sort of be slightly fearful of the things that we can measure very easily, such as the number of infections or the number of people going into hospital. But what we mustn't lose sight of is the longer term impacts that, keeping children out of education potentially has, and which we're seeing certainly here in the United Kingdom right now. I know, working in a medical school, working in a university, teaching, that having face coverings on is certainly inconvenient. It certainly, prevents some level of that communication going across for, much older students that I teach, and certainly in primary schools with much younger children. Keeping face coverings off is certainly has value. But the reality is that we have to balance that with all of the other consequences. And if it is a question between whether or not you wear face coverings or potentially close schools entirely, wearing face coverings, I think, is a relatively low cost to pay in the scheme of things.
Absolutely. Coming to you now, Dr. Sarah Pitt, who happens to be a virologist, who's now joining us from Brighton in the UK. I just want to take this next question from you. We've heard of newer variants of the coronavirus coming to light. This is something that's been discussed at large, be it the XE or the BA2. Should we be worried at this point, and what can we do to arm ourselves against the new variants?
I think we should be aware of the fact that the virus has not really settled down yet. It's still changing, and we're still seeing new variants. So what we have seen across the world is that the majority of the vaccines that are available are actually effective. I don't think we necessarily expected this, but when as the virus has changed and the new variants have popped up, the vaccines have been quite effective. But one of the key things, particularly with the Omicron variants that we're seeing, and Omicron 2 and the XE, is how infectious they are. If you don't do anything to stop the spread of the Omicron variant of the virus, on average, it will infect between 10 and 12 other people. That's a lot more infectious than influenza, where that's on average, it's about one person per infectious person, and a lot more infectious than the original version of the COVID virus, actually. And so if you take that into account, you then have to think, what percentage of the population need to be vaccinated in order to use the vaccines to bring the virus under control? And we're up to, I think we should be vaccinating 90% of the whole world in order to use vaccines to bring the virus properly under control. And so what we need to do is try and stay ahead of all the variants, because if the variant becomes more infectious, the proportion of people that need to be vaccinated increases. And that's the thing we need to do at this moment, is take vaccination really seriously, and also understand that the virus hasn't really settled down. Therefore, the pandemic's not over, even if we'd like it.
Dr. Pitt, I would just like to interject at this point. You're saying that the pandemic is not over. We need to keep looking at the virus. It still exists among us. Now, as I am, I'm sure as you are, we are part of different WhatsApp groups. There are parent groups. There's a lot of anxiety when it comes to the younger generation, the junior school heading back to school. We know that kids under 5 find it hard to wear a mask when they're in classrooms, naturally so. Assuming that cases spike, be it the XE or the BA2, should we be worried as parents, and should we be sending our kids to school?
Well, one thing you can do, as well as mask wearing, is make sure the school classroom has very good ventilation. That's very important. Something we've done here in the UK is we've installed CO2 monitors, so carbon dioxide monitors, and that monitors the amount of breathing in and out that's happening and the airflow through the building. So we know that the virus is spread, it hangs around in the air, and so that's kind of one of the things I'm wearing masks. So parents, if they're worried, they could ask the school the question about the ventilation in the classroom as well as mask wearing.
Absolutely. Dr. Green, coming back to you, Professor Green, I want to take my next question, and I want to focus on China's COVID management strategy, which has been, as we all know, making global news. What's happening in Shanghai currently? People are scrambling for essentials due to the zero COVID policy. What is the right approach for different governments as cases spike?
Sorry, I had my microphone closed. I want to just repeat again that I think that there's no one policy for the world. Each country has to basically gear their policy towards their own resources and the conditions that they have. So I don't know that we can be critical of another country. I think that we can learn from other countries. And I think that China has actually kept the disease rate very low and the fatality rate very low, which is a success story. So I think that if they feel that they are able to cope with a situation where they have this very severe limitation on activity, then that's a choice that they've made, and there's certainly a benefit, but there's a cost as well, and I guess they're doing that evaluation.
Well, look at the visuals that are coming to fore, I mean, on social media or otherwise. There are people screaming while they're in lockdown. A zero COVID policy, while it may be effective in terms of scrambling down on cases, but we have people scrambling for essentials. They're screaming to be heard, literally.
I think that, I think my colleagues here have indicated, there's a very high cost of keeping children out of school, and there's a high cost of keeping people away from work. So I think that children should be at school as far as possible. I think that we have to make every effort not to keep them out of school. And that means that we use whatever we use, but there is a price to be paid in the infection. But I think the price of keeping them out of school, in my opinion, is probably going to be much greater.
Absolutely. I think the big topic here is keeping kids out of school, if school should be shut down again at all, if necessary. Talking about this concept of masks for kids, I want to take my next question to Dr. Pinder. It's difficult to enforce masks for kids as a concept. It's even more difficult to enforce when they are younger, say below the age of 5 years. They are the most vulnerable population when it comes to COVID-19. They are unvaccinated. Are we being complacent when it comes to COVID-19 and other viruses or other epidemics that may arise?
Yeah, so, well, I hope by virtue of us having this conversation, we're not being complacent. But masks, certainly for under fives, is very difficult to implement and to enforce and really to take people with you. And one of the key skills in public health practice is to be able to take people with you. The acceptability of what you're doing is critical, because it's one thing to have regulations and to have laws and mandates. It's another thing to make sure that they actually work. And I think this drives into this sort of question, what works and what doesn't. And as you've heard from the rest of the panel, it's very specific to certain countries, to certain situations, and to certain behaviours on the people that you're trying to sort of get to behave in a particular way. So I have, I totally agree with what's been said here, that we must send our kids back to school. There is a much longer impact which is going to be there if we don't get that right. And what is going to be the challenge on the policy side is deciding, well, which are the proportionate levers that we pull from the public health point of view, and what can we actually take the population with us. Among under fives, I've got 2 under 5-year-olds in my family. Very, very difficult to get them to wear the face coverings. And I think what you've got to focus on is the stuff that's going to give you the greatest impact at potentially the lowest cost. And certainly teenagers, certainly in high school type contexts, there is evidence that mask wearing is pretty effective there, where you have sufficiently high levels of circulating virus. And I think the key thing here is to not take anything off the table. Depending on what the behaviour is going to be, what the level of circulating virus is going to be, and what the impact of that virus is going to be, is going to hopefully direct a pragmatic response from public health authorities.
Absolutely. I want to now ask all our guests who are joining us on WION at this hour about this term that has been trending on social media, COVID fatigue. It has set in for sure, for you, me, our family members, our kids. People are wary of lockdowns and ever-changing mandates when it comes to government policies. Have we as a generation learned to live with the virus in the best way possible? I want to start with Professor Manfred Green.
I think the only way that we can learn to live with the virus is to be creative. For example, in the schools, I think there should be much more teaching outdoors. Get the kids outside, certainly in the summer months, and I know it might be not easy in the wintertime. But in the summertime, at least, get them outdoors and take the masks off. They should be able to see each other. In any event, I think that in the classroom, the teachers should not be wearing masks. That's a risk that's taken. But I think it's very disturbing to children to be taught by a teacher wearing a mask. So I think that we know that there are going to be risks. And I would agree that the under fives, I would say should be pretty much exempt from it, because it's just too much of a problem to try and enforce it, and I don't think it's fair to the kids either, or to the parents. So I think that should be done. But I think we need to be creative. Lots of ventilation, lots more outdoor teaching, and I think that's in general in society. Get the restaurants and cafes out onto the sidewalk, and get people outside. I think that's going to be something that could be very beneficial, and I think it's happening. It's happening quite a lot. So I think it can be done.
Right, absolutely. Coming to you now, Dr. Sarah Pitt, I want to ask you this question, and I may have a selfish intake in this. We're all part of WhatsApp groups. There are messages coming by the gazillions every day about new reports, cases rising. Should we panic? And if at all we choose to panic, should we be heading to our pediatrician? Or should we be taking, say, containment strategies that work for the best of us? What's your strategy when newer variants rise as a virologist?
So my answer to the idea of living with COVID is to understand what we know about this virus. It arose 2 years ago, which in virology terms is brand new, and it's still changing. So panicking is not really a right thing to do, but being aware of the fact that the virus is still changing. As Professor Green was saying, we can be creative. Where there are lots of different responses that we can make to reducing the risk of ourselves and the risk that we pose to other people, bearing in mind that perhaps 1 in 3 people who have an active COVID infection don't have any symptoms. And that's kind of the theory behind mask wearing, social distancing. Socializing outdoors is a really good thing that you can do, because it just kind of spreads the virus in the air and it's less likely to infect other people. And so it's living with COVID means understanding this is a brand new virus, which we have to respond to kind of what the virus is doing. But panicking isn't really the right thing to do, because all the things that we've been doing for the last 2 years, we know that those are effective against any version of the virus, which is just being considerate of other people, understanding that it's spread through the air, so they're doing things which kind of stop us contributing to potentially to the spread of the virus through the air. And as I say, good ventilation in enclosed public spaces and socialising outdoors as far as it's possible, and just being aware of what's coming along on the track. And again, if someone's eligible for a vaccine and hasn't had it yet, then start your course of vaccination. That's another thing we can all do instead of worrying. There are active things which we can do, which I think probably helps make people feel a bit more reassured and a bit more in control in the face of a global pandemic that none of us have experienced, none of us expected to experience.
Absolutely. This is a pandemic that none of us have expected to experience altogether. Just a follow-up to that, Dr. Pitt, assuming that we are choosing to unmask, what should our decision be based on, depending on where we're living?
Well, I personally still wear a mask in an enclosed space. So if I'm on public transport, a train or a bus, if I'm in a shop, I still cover my face just in case I'm one of those people that has active infection but no symptoms. Some countries also are sort of encouraging people to take regular testing, and that's helpful because then you can be a little bit more confident about whether you are one of those infectious people. And certainly, if you have any symptoms, which might be COVID, be really cautious about socialising and mixing with people particularly people who you know to be vulnerable. So friends and relatives who you know might be vulnerable to getting very serious disease with COVID, try and stay away from those people. And again, as I say, we all know what we can do. We can just keep taking those measures. And we really need to understand that we need to be considerate of other people. It isn't just about whether you do or not like wearing a mask. I don't particularly like doing it, but I do it out of consideration for other people, because I wouldn't want to be the person. If I got COVID, I might be fine, but I don't want to be the person that gave it to someone else and that person wasn't fine. So it's about being aware of each other as well as ourselves.
Absolutely. Just a final comment from you too, Professor Pinder, about is this the right time to unmask? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the question is, if not now, then when? And you have to draw a line in the sand. And I think it's sometimes very easy as scientists, as public health experts, to sort of stand on the side and say that we have to protect everyone against COVID at all costs. The politicians are the ones who have to make those decisions. And it's very easy, again, for us to focus on COVID and then forget about all of the other things that we're not dealing with. Right now in the NHS, our National Health Service, our healthcare system in England, we have huge backlogs of operations, other elective diagnostics and procedures. And we have to make note and be concerned about all of those other issues that need sorting out. We can't look at COVID forever. But you've heard from the panel, I totally agree with them. We're here for much, much longer with this pandemic. It's certainly by no means over. And what we need to focus on is sustainable, acceptable solutions that we can simply message to people so that we can make the greatest impact.
Absolutely. I, at this point, would like to end this broadcast by thanking all our guests for joining us on WION with all their insights and views. I think something that I have deduced from this chat is that COVID is here to stay. We have to learn to live with the virus in the best way we know possible. Masks may not be here to stay, but we have to take the call for what works best for us and our families and children. We have to understand that children are heading to school, and if they are unvaccinated, they are still coming back to vulnerable populations, and we need to be cognizant of that. I thank all our guests for joining us on WION World is One at this hour, and thanks so much for all our viewers for tuning in at this point. Let's now take a quick break on WION, and we'll be back shortly on the other side with global news updates. Thanks for watching.
From our studios live in New York City, I'm Susan Tehrani, and this is WION, World is One.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hoping through a Taliban-led call now.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. The biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra
vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time. The hyphenating